in terms of pest activity, let's start by talking about what we want to see. What we want to see in our normal winter conditions are a very cold winter. So that's going to help to kill off some of the pests that typically survive the winter conditions, followed by a late spring. Personally, that's not ideal for us because we want it to get warm soon. We want to go outside and enjoy the outdoors. But we want to see that bitter cold winter followed by that late spring. What that does is that delays the start of pest season. The later in the season they start, the later they start reproducing, and the potentially the lower the pest density of those populations are come those peak seasons. What we don't want to see, we don't want to see a mild winter, which has been taking place in the Oklahoma region. And I'll talk. There is a little bit of a silver lining there with that snowstorm. We'll get back to in a second. But we don't want to see a mild winter, and we don't want to see an early spring. Again, personally, I want it to be warm right now. I'm ready for everything to go away. I want it to be warm. I want to be outside, enjoy those great outdoors. But from a pest perspective, we don't want to see that mild winter. More pests survive over the winter when it's mild, and we don't want to see that early spring. That means it moves up their activity period. The sooner they become active, the first thing they do whenever it's warm enough to become active is they start feeding and reproducing, which means populations and those multipliers ramp up very fast early on. So by the time we hit those peak months, June, July, August, September, the population density is the highest, which translates to a greater risk of exposure for pest-borne disease. Now, the silver lining you have with the region is that unexpected snowstorm. So when we have these dramatic shifts, this weather whiplash, so to speak, where it's warm, then it's cold, then it's warm, then it's cold, that actually works in our favor. Pests do a great job of preparing for every single season. They're four-season survivors. It doesn't matter what we typically throw at them, but they need time to prepare. So when we have these unexpected snowstorms, that can actually help us in a sense because it can help to knock back some of those pests that weren't able to prepare quite as quick. The unfortunate downfall is usually whenever it's a late snowfall like that and you haven't had enough warm temperatures to encourage pests to leave structures. A lot of those pests that survive the winter, those structural pests that we don't want to see, things like our termites and ants and cockroaches and flies, they oftentimes will overwinter in our structures. And we don't like it to be cold in our structures. And so we've got everything that those pests need to survive those winter months and not only survive, thrive throughout the winter, even whenever those unexpected snowfall can happen. But I would say that I would expect that to help kind of pull things back just a little bit in the region and may give you a little bit of reprieve, potentially extending a little bit that pest activity period to start for Oklahoma.
So would you say if we had another winter storm come through, that would work in our favor?
I mean, right now it would be great because temperatures are warm, right? So it is warm enough right now in the region. You're starting to get increased rainfall. Those are the two conditions that, for us, from an entomologist perspective, those are the warning bells are going off. It's warm enough, and that rainfall. Those are the two climatic factors that ramp up pest activity for every pest across the board: mosquitoes, ticks, termites, everything that we don't want to deal with. This is every factor that could be taking place right now that tells them it's time to start to prepare for spring is happening. So they're going to be encouraged to start looking for resources outside of protective structures. Natural food sources are going to become more abundant because of that increase in rainfall. So if they are caught off guard by that late season storm, that would be fantastic. That would buy you a little bit more time, a hit, and could essentially hit that reset button a little bit, which would be great news when we're talking about delaying activity of really dangerous, potentially deadly pests, things like ticks, mosquitoes, ticks being the fastest arthropod disease vectors in the United States, and then mosquitoes being the world's deadliest organism with the diseases that they transfer. So it would be great news if you did get that late season snowfall, which I know for everybody, though, we're probably a little bit stir crazy and ready to get out of the house. So
In Oklahoma specifically, we have problems with all pests, but
yeah.
ticks and termites are a huge problem. Is there anything that homeowners can do to prepare for them?
Yeah, so we'll kind of tackle those one at a time. So for ticks, probably one of the most important things is landscape management. As this time of year, one of the things that helps to increase tick activity around a structure, around a home, is increase in rainfall and temperature leads to an increase in vegetation. They rely on that vegetation to give them this nice protective harborage site. They're a sit and wait predator. They wait for you to come to them. They're not like a mosquito. They're not going to fly around and come find you, but they will find areas that they know that their host frequents. And they usually do that on transitional edges of property. So where you have nice tall grass next to maybe a manicured lawn, that gives ticks an opportunity to climb up on that tall grass and lie in wait for their next potential host to come by. So keeping your property well maintained, eliminating as much landscape debris and brush as possible, particularly as you go into the spring months. You're starting to do all the spring yard cleaning, picking up all the dead sticks and everything else. Don't create brush piles in or around the property. Those brush piles are going to attract a lot of other pests, things like mice, that actually bring ticks into the area. So keeping that property well maintained and manicured is going to be a real important factor in minimizing the likelihood of tick infestations in and around the property. For termites, it could be relatively the same thing. Keeping an eye out for making sure that you don't have debris piled up against the home. Termites will eat anything with cellulose in it. In most cases, when we're talking about natural cellulose, that's going to be things like wood, right? So making sure you don't have piles of wood debris, all of the firewood that you may have that you pulled up against the home. That is one of the absolute worst things to do. As a convenience factor, it's nice to not have to go very far to get firewood. But from a pest perspective and from a termite danger perspective, that's one of the worst things you can do. You're essentially ringing a dinner bell for these termites that are going to be moving into those wood piles, then moving into the structural lumber of your home. So trying to make sure that we're eliminating any of those conducive conditions and then being vigilant, looking for any signs that seem out of the ordinary. You don't have to be a pest expert and know exactly what differentiates between termite activity and ant activity. Just simply being able to identify something that looks unusual, notifying your pest management professional at the very first signs of activity, particularly when it comes to something like termites. It doesn't take very long for a early infestation to translate to a incredibly costly infestation. So termites feed on the structural lumber of your home, causing over $6 billion a year in damages. So, and this is something that most people don't know, it is not covered under most homeowners insurance policies. So this can be, even though they're a tiny pest, they create a huge problem. And the last thing any of us need right now is something costing us more money in terms of, structural damage to the home. So being able to identify anything that looks out of the ordinary and working with your pest management professional at those first signs of activity. And of course, if you don't have one, visiting pestworld.org, there's a zip code locator on the website. You can throw in your zip code and it will provide you with a list of licensed trained pest management professionals that can come and take a look at the home. This is the perfect time of year to conduct that annual seasonal inspection for these pests. So if your pest management professional is the one that's putting those things out, then that's perfect. And the reason why I say that is because there's different tick species, there's different termite species. The control options that you're referencing for termites, those may be ideal for some of the more costly termite species. There's other termite species that those won't impact at all. Your pest management professional is going to be able to assess your situation. You mentioned it's a rural area. Every home is going to bring different conditions. Every person that lives in that home creates different environmental conditions that cause some homes to be attractive to pests. We create some of the problems that we deal with on a regular basis with pests. And it's the human element that sometimes can create some of the biggest pest issues and conducive conditions. So that pest management professional is going to be able to assess what those conditions are around the home, determine what pest species you're dealing with. And that's when they're going to be able to implement some of those control measures. And they'll also provide expert guidance on scene to tell you exactly what you can be doing year round to help minimize the pest problems. Because really, that's what we're looking for, right? We don't want a solution that's going to just give us a short-term solution for a pest problem. We want to keep that structure, that home, your family pest-free all year round. Because it's, we're talking about major structural damage and costs associated with termite infestations, ticks, again, fastest growing arthropod disease vector between Lyme disease and some other illnesses that can be potentially life-threatening, particularly for the younger members of our family and the older members of our family. Mosquitoes transmitting a whole host of different diseases that can quickly become deadly. So just a large number of public health pests that tend to live in and around our structures. So it's critical that we work with that pest management professional to keep those pest issues resolved.
I think that's all the questions that I had. Is there anything you want to touch on that I maybe didn't ask?
I think I about covered it. Just referencing back to where folks can go to work with a pest management professional if they don't already have one. Pestrol.org. Use that zip code locator on the website, and that'll get them in touch with a pest management professional.